in northern Israel. Hope you're all having a great January 31st, 2025. My goodness, whole month has passed into the year already. And yesterday, Israel and Hamas exchanged hostages for terrorists and other criminals and ne'er-do-wells. That's right, the Hamas released a few Israeli hostages that they had captured and 5 Thai workers they had captured and taken hostage as well. And for some reason, they had been holding those Thai workers an additional more than a year after the previous Thai workers that they had released. Did you even know that they were still holding Thai workers? I bet you most people didn't even know that. So they released 5 Thai workers who literally had come to Israel to work in agriculture, right? And they were working in the fields when they got captured by these crazy, insane people from Gaza. But they have nothing. They have no beef with them. They got nothing. They don't know anything about them. Just literally sitting there doing their work, or standing there doing their work in the field. Suddenly you got these crazy ass Islamic extremists, these Islamo-fascists, basically modern day Nazis from Hamas, who came and kidnapped them and did God knows what to them, mistreated them God knows how cruelly for more than a year. Even though Thailand had negotiated already a deal to get their hostages freed back in 2023, when Israel had its first exchange hostages for terrorists, when they managed to get 105 of the hostages back alive. And that was for like a 10-day truce or something like that, which in the end, the Hamas, of course, violated. And so the parties went back to warring because Hamas would not hold up its end of the agreement. If it had, then one of the hostages would have been already freed, the one that was supposed to be freed by, during this phase. She would have been freed already more than a year ago, apparently. Anyway, this whole thing is exactly playing out the way people who said, look, we want the hostages back, we got to be realistic. These scumbags, and that's what they are, these scumbags from Hamas, are going to obviously amp up the PR, and the useful idiots who believe that crap are going to believe the propaganda. And when they parade the Israelis around in these like fake military uniforms, I'm talking about people, young women who were captured in their pajamas from military bases that they were serving on, but they were in their pajamas when they were taken. They weren't wearing military uniforms. And they put these like fake ID cards with lanyards around their neck with Palestinian colors and propaganda information, and they stand them on these stages and make speeches and shit. And then in the background it says that Zionism is Nazism and all this bullshit, and that the resistance, which means terrorism, will continue until there's no more Israel, basically, right? The resistance will destroy Zionism, which means destroy Israel, which means kill all the Jews, right? Look, 97% or more of Jews are Zionists, okay? Jews believe that Jews should have a homeland where we can decide for ourselves, right? We have our own sovereignty and decide for ourselves how to live our lives and defend ourselves, right? 97% of Jews, if not more, of Jews around the world believe that Jews should have the right to a Jewish homeland. It doesn't mean that it has to be, governed by Jewish law. but it should be a home for the Jews, by the Jews, about the Jews. And that's what it is. In fact, it's a secular Jewish homeland that respects anybody's religion and anybody's degree of religiosity. And of course, it is for the Jews, by the Jews, about the Jews, even though it respects and grants human rights and civil rights to all of its citizens and all of its residents and all of its visitors. So, if you come to Israel as a tourist, just like you would expect in any normal country, you have rights to protect you. You're not going to get screwed over by a system just because you're a tourist, right? Which is the case in many countries, by the way. If you visit as a tourist, they have different prices for tourists. They have special rules for tourists. They have special, punishments for tourists if you do something wrong, right? There's many countries where it's something, if you go visit some country, and God forbid, let's say you're driving around and you get into an accident or something, and you're a tourist, you're automatically at fault, even if you weren't at fault. Like technically, right? You're automatically at fault. Why? Because if you weren't visiting, the accident wouldn't have happened, which is of course insane illogic. So what, you want nobody to visit your country? Like, what about people who are driving through your country, literally just passing through, right? Or what about, any number of other things? Truckers from other countries driving into your borders delivering goods. So they're at fault because they're not citizens of your country. Like, it's just and there's tons of countries like this, by the way, where there's rules like this. Not necessarily that specific. Like, that was a specific rule in Thailand until recently. But there are other countries where that is a rule still. There's a law, not just a rule. Then there's countries like, territories like Hamastan, otherwise known as Gaza, where it's just the rule of the bully, the rule of the big, bad, oppressive bully who pretends, on the one hand, to be this democratically elected party, right? But on the other hand, doesn't give anybody any kind of democratic rights, no civil rights, no nothing, right? Officially, women don't have to wear a burqa in Gaza, but in reality, they do, right? It's ridiculous. The whole situation is ridiculous. Israel releases Hamas releases innocent hostages that it captured, and Israel releases terrorists like Zachariah Zubaida, who was the leader of the Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigade, which was one of the leading terrorist groups during the Second Intifada and after, and is still a problematic group. He literally has blood on his hands, and so do others, many others, that were released yesterday. They released terrorists, rapists, murderers, pedophiles, you name it, all the bad things. And these people, when they get back to their territories, the locals have huge parades and parties and celebrate them. I'm sorry, but you celebrate mass murderers? You celebrate terrorists? What kind of a national identity is that? I can tell you this. If Israel had somebody who went to a foreign land, committed a mass murder, was captured by their security forces, and was kept in a prison where he was given his rights, even if he was treated harshly, he was given his rights, and he was, kept alive and allowed to have visits from his attorneys, his family, his friends, whatever, over time, even conjugal visits with his wife or whatever. And eventually the Israeli diplomats managed to secure his freedom, right? When he got back home, he would not be celebrated, right? There would not be big parties in the street to celebrate such a person. It might be a diplomatic achievement if there was some reason that Israeli diplomats would want to free the person in the first place, right? I mean, look at it this way. Jonathan Pollard, okay, who I consider to be a personal friend, okay? Jonathan Pollard spent decades and decades in an American maximum security prison, federal penitentiary, because he gave secrets to Israel, America's ally, that the United States was required to give to Israel, and they failed to do. It's thanks to those secrets, by the way, that all the modern buildings in Israel have bomb shelters. This man is a legendary, iconic hero of the Jewish people to a degree that you have no idea. And while he was languishing in prison, very few people cared about him at all. I did, and I did what I could, which wasn't to say a lot or something, but I did everything I could. Like I wasn't, I didn't have the ability to send an army of lawyers for him to push the case harder. If I had that, I would have, but I didn't have that. So I did everything that I could. And there was a lot of stuff behind the scenes with his wife Esther and him. Esther, Zichrona Levracha, was an amazing woman. She gave everything to get him free, to see that he would be freed. She did everything that she could do to see that he would be freed. He was a true hero. The Israeli population stayed mostly quiet about it. There were some people here and there. We're talking a tiny, literally a handful of people who cared about him over the decades. And when he was eventually freed, because his prison sentence had been served, basically, when he was freed, and he eventually got back to Israel after another 5 years, he got to Israel. Was there a parade? No. Was there a huge celebration? No. Did he kill anyone directly? No. Did he do anything like that? No. Was he celebrated as a hero that he should be? No, he wasn't. We don't, as a people, and maybe we should, right? We don't celebrate those of ours who come back home enough. Maybe we should. This country says it cares about its own people. I don't see it. Where are the parades for all the hostages who came home? Where are they? What, 5 minutes in front of a TV celebrating and hugging and that's it? It's bullshit. Why don't we make a big fanfare? Why don't we celebrate? Why don't we put up banners that say Zionism will prevail and defeat Islamic fascism and Islamo-Nazism? Why don't we put up signs like that and make a big stage after they come home and celebrate them and carry forth the names of these heroes who survived these awful nightmares and bring them home in style and set them up for life and make them national heroes? Why don't we do that? Oh, it's not our character. Fuck that. Not our character? So you're going to let these scumbags set the tone and win the day on public image? Because that's what it's all about. Because they know kinetically they lost over there in Gaza. They know that they lost. They will never admit it because they don't have courage. They're not men. They're cowards. Right? Why don't we celebrate our real heroes? Ask yourself that. It's a PR war, and Israel destroyed the enemy kinetically. And Israel is choosing to not destroy the enemy in the PR battle. Why? Why do you think that is? Why do you think that is? I'll tell you why that is. Israel doesn't care. Israel does not care about winning the PR war, which is what this whole war is about. For the Hamas, actually. Not for Israel. For Israel, it's about much more than that. It's about survival. But there is no kinetic chance for these Islamofascists to actually win the day. And the bastards know that. So the best they can do is hope for a PR win. So Israel should destroy that PR win. Why? Because it matters. Why? Because the useful idiots who align themselves with the Palestinians do so because they've been brainwashed by the goddamn PR game. And if you keep losing more and more to them, you're going to lose the fucking war. I don't mean kinetically. I mean, you're going to lose the PR fucking war, which has been raging for decades now and is going to continue to rage until there's a clear and decisive winner. And guess what? The Palestinians are not going to let go of that shit. They're going to fight that because it's the only tool they have. You don't believe me? Look at the goddamn facts. Look at the goddamn facts. How are they not winning the PR war right now? The hostages that they freed so gracefully, so gently. These are young women that they captured, beat, tortured, raped, disembodied, cut off parts of their bodies, literally cut off fingers and God knows what else did to them, mentally tortured them, psychologically tortured them, emotionally tortured them, physically tortured them, abused them, harassed them. But they come off looking like the good guys. Give me a break. Hey, Hamas, go fuck yourself. Yeah, that's what I think. I think Israel should make a big show of getting its hostages back. If the hostages don't want to participate, that's fine. They don't have to. They should still make a big show, have all the footage possible of the hostages being released, and celebrate it as heroes with as many family members as possible. The hostages want to be by themselves and recover, and I'll grant them that. They don't have to be on display. They're human beings, and they suffered like hell. We don't need to use them as PR puppets. But if they want to be in it, let them. And if they don't want to be in it, that's fine. Do the PR thing big time. Destroy the Hamas at the PR game. Destroy. It's the easiest thing in the world. They're fucking animals. They're terrorists who tortured and raped little girls, young women. These aren't men. These are cowards of the lowest order. They don't deserve respect. They deserve scorn. They deserve repudiation. And anyone that stands for them is a scumbag at their level. If you are pro-Palestinian, you should hate the Hamas. And you should hate all forms of Palestinian terrorism. And if you don't understand that, you're not pro-Palestinian. Palestinians deserve to have a free and secure democracy, not a goddamn Islamo-fascist nation. And if you don't understand that, you're not pro-Palestinian. And if you think I'm just going to stop saying this kind of stuff because America lost the war in Iraq, you're an idiot. The reason America lost the war in Iraq is because it made the wrong partnerships with the wrong parties. Not because Arabs don't know what democracy is. Shit tons of them study in the United States and get degrees in law, history, and political science. You think they don't know what democracy is? They study in the United States because it's a fucking democracy. People from Afghanistan, same thing. You think their elites don't go to the United States to study? They do. How do you know that there's American universities with Afghanis and Iraqis? I fucking studied in one of them, full of Arabs and Afghanis and Persians. In the heart of Washington, D.C., one of the most political schools on earth, the George Washington University. I studied there. Full of people from the Middle East and Persia. Hello. I say hi to you. I see you. So yeah, Israel has to destroy the Hamas in the PR game because this is a bullshit thing happening. Hamas is taking advantage of the situation to make themselves look like the heroes. They're not the fucking heroes. They're the scumbags that started this fucking war and took innocent people as hostages and abused them and tortured them and raped them and did all kinds of awful things to them. And Israel should highlight that fact till the goddamn cows come home. After every hostage is home, they should continue to highlight that fact and drive it home to every person's head to understand if you support Hamas, you are anti-Palestinian. You're not just anti-Israel, you're anti-Palestinian. If you support Palestinian Islamic Jihad, you're anti-Palestinian. The only way to be pro-Palestinian is to support a Palestinian nation that wants peace and prosperity and that wants to be governed in a democratic way, a real democratic way, that has elections every so on, every so forth, every certain period, and that actually has a real democracy where it's not just a feudal tribal order of power and whoever has the most guns and is the most criminal can say that they're in charge. No, you need to have one order of the gun, just like Israel has, one order of the gun, one power of the gun, and it is the state. And the state isn't beholden to any one tribe, and the state isn't beholden to any one particular small group. The state is the government. The government is chosen by the people. What are we talking about? I'm talking about the goddamn scandalous deal between Israel and Hamas to release hostages for terrorists, for tons of terrorists. 33 hostages for 2,000 terrorists and rapists and murderers and pedophiles and criminals and thieves. 33 for 2,000. Do the math. Think about that ratio. What would your country do if 33 of your people were released by a force that demanded 2,000 terrorists to be freed from your prisons? What would you do? Would you be happy to give up 2,000 terrorists and then let the terrorist scumbags who made that deal with you parade around the hostages and then do parades for their heroes coming back home, their terrorist scumbag heroes coming back home, and let them win the PR war? Or would you do the same thing in reverse but bigger so that you win the PR war? That's what Israel should do right now, but they're not doing it, and it's very sad. Anyway, I got to get going. Peace. I'll catch you guys later. Shalom.